30 stories above ground in a gleaming glass office, Richard "Rick" Andrews, the celebrated genius behind Sentinel Cybertech, stood silently watching the city lights flicker below. The coffee in his mug had long gone cold, much like the steely resolve in his plan. He had no idea that just weeks from now, on the very day of his lavish wedding, a secret would unravel, one that would change his entire world. 3 children, his children, ones he had never met. Can you imagine discovering you're the father of identical triplets on the very day of your wedding? This wasn't just a story of revenge. It was a painful voyage toward a truth that cut deeper than any heartbreak from the past. The towering glass and steel headquarters of Sentinel Cybertech reflected a shimmering artificial lake below, distorted and dreamlike. Rick, age 35, was a titan in the world of cybersecurity, a former white-hat hacker who had built his empire from nothing, starting from a college scholarship project that grew into a multi-billion-dollar tech company. Now, with a phone pressed to his ear, an odd tension stiffened his perfectly tailored form. His fingers tapped restlessly on the dark walnut desk. "Good afternoon. May I speak with Dr. Ana Ramirez?" Rick asked, his voice carefully controlled, though his heart thundered in his chest. "One moment, please," came the receptionist's reply from Children's Hope Hospital. While waiting, Rick glanced out at the view. He dedicated his entire life to building Sentinel Cybertech. His sharp hazel eyes reflected determination, and a flicker of something else, something that only emerged when he thought of her. Anna. "Hello?" The woman's voice on the other end snapped him back to the moment. "Anna, it's Rick," he said, forcing casualness into his tone. "Rick Andrews." A long pause, proof she remembered him, clearly. "Wow, that's a surprise," Anna finally responded, cautiousness lacing her tone. "How long has it been?" 6 years, Rick replied. 6 years, 2 months, and a few days. He immediately regretted the precision. It betrayed more vulnerability than he intended. He stood and walked toward the window. His reflection showed a powerful man in a flawless Italian suit, but his eyes gave him away. No one else could see the weakness there. "What's the reason for your call after all this time?" Anna asked directly. Rick took a deep breath and delivered the line he'd rehearsed for weeks. "I'm getting married in 3 weeks. I wanted to personally invite you." Another pause. Rick could practically picture her expression. An arched brow, pressed lips, perhaps a furrowed brow. "You're inviting me to your wedding?" Her voice carried the incredulous disbelief he expected. Rick responded with feigned nonchalance. "Celeste and I want everyone important to us there. You meant something to me." As he spoke, his fingers unconsciously grazed a gold envelope on his desk, the formal invitation. What Anna didn't know was that this phone call was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. The invitation to his wedding to Celeste Sinclair, a world-renowned fashion model and the face of several luxury brands, was no act of reconciliation. It was the first move in a meticulously plotted revenge. "I was surprised by your invitation, but thank you," Anna replied. "I'll try to come." "Perfect. The formal invite will be at your doorstep tomorrow," Rick concluded, allowing himself a small smile of satisfaction. "It's good to hear your voice again." As he ended the call, his assistant, Stella Cruz, entered the office carrying a tablet. "Mr. Andrews, Miss Reese is waiting for you for the 11 o'clock meeting." Rick nodded, shifting back into his professional persona. She needed to see it all, he told himself. Everything he'd achieved without her. The empire he'd built. The woman he would marry. Only then would she understand what she gave up when she broke his heart 6 years ago. What Rick didn't anticipate was that his perfect plan was about to unravel a secret that would change his life forever. Ana Ramirez placed the phone back on her desk, like it was burning hot. Her hands trembled slightly as she processed what had just happened. Rick Andrews. After 6 years of complete silence, he was inviting her to his wedding. A nervous laugh escaped her lips as she ran a hand through her now shoulder-length brown hair. The walls of her clinic at Children's Hope Hospital were decorated with colorful drawings from her young patients. On the shelf behind her desk were several picture frames. 3 of them displayed identical 5-year-old boys with mischievous grins and striking hazel eyes. Rick's eyes. "Dr. Ramirez, your next patient is ready," said Nurse Teresa, peeking in through the door. "Thank you, Teresa. Just a minute," Anna answered, trying to compose herself. She stood and approached one of the photographs, gently touching the children's faces with affection. Marco, Leo, and Charlie, her triplets, her sons, Rick's sons, the children he never knew about. She remembered vividly the last time she tried to reach him, when the boys had just turned 1. She had composed an email with photos and a detailed explanation. The reply came quickly, but not from Rick. "Please stop attempting to contact Rick. He has moved on, and any claim of paternity at this point would damage his public image and the stability of the company. Victoria Reese, Executive Director, Sentinel Cybertech." After that email, Anna had made the painful decision not to try again. If Rick allowed his mentor to respond to something so personal, it was clear there was no room in his life for 3 little boys. The buzz of her phone pulled her back to the present, a message from her mother. "Can I pick up the boys at 4 o'clock? I promised them the park." Anna replied with a yes and put the phone down. She had to decide what to do about Rick's invitation. Should she go and finally reveal the existence of their children? Or should she keep the distance she had maintained for 6 years? Her mind couldn't help but drift back to their college days. Rick and she would study until dawn. He would code non-stop while she reviewed anatomy. She remembered their first date, an impromptu picnic on campus, how his eyes lit up when he talked about changing the world with his tech ideas. And then, they slowly drift away as his project turned into an obsession. "I can't compete with your company, Rick," she had said on the day they broke up. "There's no space left for us in your life." He had tried to convince her that things would get better once he secured funding, that he just needed more time. But Anna knew how to spot a pattern when she saw one. Now, 6 years later, Rick Andrews was everything he had dreamed of being. A tech magnate, a celebrated visionary, and soon to be married. Anna opened her desk drawer and pulled out a yellow envelope. Inside was an ultrasound from 6 years ago, showing 3 tiny embryos. The last scan before Rick vanished from her life, swept away by his new empire. "Dr. Ramirez, the child is waiting." Teresa's voice called again, more urgently. "Coming," Anna replied, quickly putting the ultrasound away and donning her white coat. She had made her decision. She would attend that wedding, but she wouldn't go alone. It was time Rick Andrews met his children. If he was ready to parade her as a token of his success, he needed to be ready for the consequences of their reunion. What Anna couldn't yet foresee was how that single decision would trigger a chain of events that could upend the carefully built life she had created for herself and her sons. Victoria Reese watched Rick from across the conference table with careful eyes. At 55, she remained an imposing figure, her jet black hair pulled back into a tight mohawk twist, her tailored suit impeccable. She had been the first person to believe in Rick's potential when he was just a bright college student with an ambitious idea. Now, as executive director and his right hand, she protected the interests of Sentinel Cybertech like a lioness guarding her cub. The launch of the new operating system should coincide with the merger announcement, Victoria said, sliding a document toward Rick. Shareholders are expecting major media impact. Rick nodded absent-mindedly. His thoughts remained on the call with Anna. There had been something in her voice, an edge he hadn't expected. After 6 years, he had anticipated surprise, maybe even bitterness or regret, but what he heard sounded guarded, like she was keeping something from him. "Rick?" Victoria's voice cut in, brows slightly furrowed. "Are you listening?" "Sorry, Victoria," he replied, refocusing. "I was just thinking about the wedding. There are still a lot of details pending." Victoria narrowed her eyes, scanning his expression. "You invited Ana Ramirez as planned." Rick was startled. Victoria knew nearly every detail of his life, but he didn't remember mentioning his intention to invite Ana. He nodded slowly, watching for her reaction. A flicker passed through Victoria's eyes before her face returned to its usual unreadable state. "And did she accept?" she asked casually, though her fingers tightened slightly on the folder she held. "She said she'd try to come," Rick replied. She sounded surprised. Victoria leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable again. "Understandably. You two haven't had contact in years. Are you sure this won't complicate things with Celeste?" "Celeste knows about Ana," Rick lied smoothly. "I explained that she was an important part of my past, and that inviting her was a way of closing that chapter." The truth was, Celeste Sinclair, his 29-year-old fiancée, had no idea Ana existed. Their relationship had begun a few years ago, a media-savvy pairing that benefited them both. She gained credibility by being with a respected businessman. He gained the image of a successful man with a dazzling woman on his arm. Marriage was the logical next step in his public-facing narrative of total success. Having Ana see that would be the icing on the cake. "All right," Victoria said, changing the subject. "About the Singapore contracts." The meeting continued for another hour, but Rick couldn't shake the feeling that Victoria was unusually interested in Ana. When he was finally alone in the conference room, Rick pulled out his phone and opened an old photo stored in a secure folder. In it, he and Ana were smiling in front of a lake, young, hopeful, unburdened. It had been taken a week before Ana left him, telling him that his obsession with the company had destroyed their relationship. At the time, he was on the brink of landing his first major investment. He had needed her to understand the pressure he was under, to give him more time, but she chose to walk away at the most pivotal moment of his life. The sound of the door opening startled him. Victoria had returned, reaching for her forgotten tablet on the table. Her eyes briefly glanced at Rick's phone screen before he quickly locked it. "Reminiscing about the past?" she asked. Rick uncomfortably pocketed the device. "Just checking that I had the right address to send the invite." Victoria retrieved her tablet and turned to leave, but before exiting, she paused. "Be careful, Rick," she said, without looking back. "The past has a nasty habit of showing up when you least expect it." As the door closed behind her, Rick felt an inexplicable chill. For a moment, it was as if Victoria knew something he didn't, something related to Ana, but he quickly brushed the thought aside. Impossible. No one knew his true intentions behind that invitation. What Rick didn't know was that Victoria Reese had been hiding a secret for years, one that could destroy everything he'd built, and the invitation that had just reached Ana's hands would become the trigger to a ticking time bomb. "Mom, Leo took my dinosaur!" shouted Charlie, the youngest of the triplets by just under 2 minutes, as he ran toward Ana with tears in his hazel eyes. Ana set the grocery bags on the kitchen counter and knelt down to meet her son's level. "Leo, come here, please," she called with a firm but calm voice. The second of the triplets appeared in the kitchen doorway, clutching a green plastic Tyrannosaurus Rex and wearing the same guilty expression as his brother. "It's my turn," he said, though his tone suggested he knew he was in the wrong. Marco, the oldest by a minute, joined them with his arms crossed and the posture of a mediator. I told him to wait for his turn, Mom, but he wouldn't listen. Anna watched her 3 sons with a blend of love and gentle discipline. Physically identical, the same slightly wavy dark hair, the same sharp hazel eyes, the same dimple on the left cheek when they smiled. But their personalities were completely different. Marco was responsible, Leo adventurous, and Charlie sensitive. And all 3 were the living image of their father. Leo, you know we have rules about sharing toys, Anna explained patiently. Give it back to Charlie and wait your turn. Leo let out a dramatic sigh, but complied, returning the dinosaur with a half-hearted mumble. Now help me unpack the groceries, Anna said as she stood up. Then we'll have dinner. The boys jumped in to help, forming a tiny assembly line to move food from the bags into the pantry. Anna watched them, her heart split between gratitude and worry. The golden envelope that had arrived that morning sat on the dining table, a constant reminder of the decision she had to make. As the boys washed their hands and took their seats, Anna served stew that had been simmering all afternoon, a recipe from her mother before she left. Mrs. Naina had been her rock for years, helping raise the triplets while Anna completed her pediatric residency. Mum, can we go to the zoo this weekend? Marco asked, blowing on a spoonful of hot broth. Our teacher said there are new baby pandas, Charlie added, his eyes sparkling with excitement. And big crocodiles too, Leo chimed in, mimicking a clawed monster with his hands. Anna smiled, but her mind was racing. She had 2 weeks to decide whether she would take the boys to Rick's wedding. 2 weeks to figure out if this was the right time for their father to meet them, and for them to meet him. We'll see if we can go, she finally answered. But first, there's something I want to talk to you about. 3 identical pairs of eyes locked on her. Do you remember when I told you that everyone has a dad, even if some dads don't live with their kids? She began, choosing her words carefully. The boys nodded. Is our dad coming? Charlie asked, always the most intuitive. Anna felt the air leave her lungs. Sometimes her children's insight startled her. Not exactly, she replied honestly, but there's a chance we might meet him soon. Is he an astronaut? Leo asked eagerly. Miguel said his dad is a pilot who travels all over the world. No, not an astronaut. Anna chuckled. He's a businessman. He works with computers and technology, like Iron Man. Leo's eyes lit up. Like Iron Man? Not that flashy, Anna laughed, but he does work in advanced technology. Marco, ever the serious one, studied her carefully. Why doesn't he live with us? The question Anna had always dreaded. She took a deep breath before answering. Sometimes people take different paths in life. Your dad and I separated before you were born, and he didn't know you existed, she explained gently. Not because he didn't want you, but because he never got the chance to know about you. Why didn't you tell him? Marco persisted, frowning, the exact same way Rick did when something didn't make sense. Anna felt the knot in her throat tighten. How could she explain to a 5-year-old the complexities of their situation? How could she tell him she had tried many times, only to be stonewalled by a woman who seemed to control every aspect of Rick's life? I tried, she said finally, but sometimes things don't go as we hope. Still, now there's a chance he might meet you, and I want to prepare you for that. What if he doesn't like us? Charlie's small voice carried a tremor of genuine fear. Anna opened her arms, and the boys rushed into her embrace around the table. That's impossible, she assured them, kissing their heads. No one who meets you could ever not love you. As she held her sons tightly, Anna made a decision. She would attend Rick Andrews' wedding, and she would bring the triplets with her. Not as an act of revenge, but as a matter of justice. Rick had the right to meet his children, and more importantly, they had the right to meet their father. What Anna couldn't yet know was that this decision would spark a series of events that would forever alter not only Rick's life, but also the lives of everyone entangled in this complex web of secrets and truths long buried. The boutique for little princes was nearly empty when Anna arrived with the triplets. It was a high-end store in the most luxurious mall in the city, not the kind of place she usually shopped for her children, but the occasion demanded it. "I want them to look perfect," she explained to the sales lady who approached to assist them. "I need 3 matching suits for 5-year-old boys." "Of course, ma'am," the woman replied with polished courtesy. "What's the occasion?" "A wedding," Anna answered, watching her sons curiously explore the displayed toys. "Marco, Leo, Charlie, come and try these on," she called. The boys reluctantly left the colorful displays and headed to the fitting rooms. While the sales lady took measurements and brought various options, Anna couldn't help but wonder if she was making the right choice. Her phone buzzed, a message from Dr. Paul Mendoza, the neurologist she'd met at the hospital just 3 months ago and had recently started seeing. "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you? I can be moral support." Anna smiled at his offer, but replied with firm resolve. "Thank you, but this is something I have to do alone, with the boys. I'll tell you everything afterward." Paul was a kind and patient man, traits she had deeply come to value in their short time together. Unlike Rick, whose obsession with success had consumed everything, Paul seemed to understand balance between professional and personal life. "Mum, do I look like a prince?" Charlie asked, spinning around in his little navy blue suit. "Like the most handsome prince," Anna replied, smiling and adjusting his bow tie. Marco and Leo looked equally charming in their matching suits. Looking at them now, the resemblance to Rick was even more striking. The same upright posture, the same furrowed brow when something puzzled them. As she paid for the suits, a familiar voice caught her attention. "Anna Ramirez?" Turning around, she came face to face with Gabriel Lim, a former college friend and mutual acquaintance of hers and Rick's. "Gabriel, what a surprise," she replied, genuinely startled. Gabriel approached with a warm smile. At 35, he still had the carefree air from their university days, though a few grey strands now lined his dark hair. "I can't believe it. How many years has it been? 5, 6, he asked, before his attention turned to the triplets. "And these little gentlemen are—" His voice trailed off as he observed the boys with growing curiosity. Anna saw the exact moment the realization hit him, the way his eyes widened slightly, how his gaze flicked between the children and her. "They're my sons," she confirmed calmly. "Marco, Leo, and Charlie. Say hello to Mr. Lim, an old friend of Mom's." The boys greeted him politely before quickly losing interest and returning to explore the toy section nearby. They look just like—" Gabriel couldn't finish the sentence. "They're identical," Anna confirmed softly. "And we're about to attend his wedding." Gabriel paled. "Rick knows?" "Not yet," Anna replied, "but he's about to." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the children's laughter nearby. "You were invited to the wedding?" Gabriel asked finally, still processing. Anna smiled faintly. "Rick called me personally." Gabriel frowned, confused. "That's surprising, especially considering—" He hesitated. "Considering what?" Anna prompted. Gabriel looked uncertain before continuing. "A few months ago, at a business dinner, Rick had a bit too much to drink and started talking about the past." He paused again, visibly uncomfortable. "He mentioned your name, said, 'One day I'll show her everything she missed out on by not believing in me.'" Anna felt a chill down her spine. "What exactly did he say?" Gabriel looked uneasy. "He said it like he had a plan. I don't mean to alarm you, but it felt premeditated." The revelation confirmed the suspicion Anna had felt since Rick's unexpected call. He hadn't invited her out of courtesy or closure. He wanted to flaunt his success in her face. "Thanks for the warning, Gabriel," she said calmly, though the storm inside her was growing. But maybe it's time Rick faced the consequences of his actions, or rather, his absence. Gabriel looked back at the boys, who were now racing to build the tallest tower with displayed blocks. "They're amazing, Anna," he said sincerely. "How did you manage all of this on your own?" "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "but my mother has been an incredible support, and the hospital's been understanding with my schedule." "And now you've decided it's time Rick meets them?" Curiosity tinged his voice. Anna exhaled. "I tried before, Gabriel, many times, but I always received negative responses, not from him, but from Victoria Reese." Gabriel's expression shifted at the name. "Victoria's always been protective of Rick," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Some in the company joke she's more bodyguard than mentor." "Do you think Rick knew she was blocking my messages?" Anna asked, a doubt that had haunted her for years. Gabriel shrugged. "Hard to say. Victoria controls a lot of access to him, especially anything tied to public image." The kids came running back, tired of the toys. "Mom, I'm hungry," Leo said, tugging gently at her blouse. "Let's go eat," Anna promised, before turning back to Gabriel. "It was good to see you." "You too," he said, handing her a business card. "Please, call me after the wedding. I want to know how it all goes." Anna took the card and slipped it into her bag. "I will," she promised, before saying goodbye. As she walked out of the store with the boys, her conversation with Gabriel echoed in her mind. Now she understood Rick's invitation more clearly. It wasn't an olive branch. It was the culmination of a long-planned act of vengeance. What Rick didn't know was that she, too, had something to reveal, something that would irreversibly alter the course of both their lives. That night, as she tucked her sons into bed, Anna made up her mind. Rick Andrews would meet his children during the ceremony of his own wedding, and the world he had carefully constructed would be on the brink of crumbling. What Anna didn't know was that someone else was pulling strings from the shadows, someone whose past actions threatened to come to light, with devastating consequences for everyone involved. Victoria Reese watched the city lights from the window of her elegant apartment on the 30th floor of an exclusive building. In one hand she held a glass of red wine, in the other, her phone. A new message from Gabriel Lim lit up the screen. "They're going. She's bringing the kids to the wedding." Victoria exhaled slowly. For 6 years, she had guarded this secret with precision, intercepting emails, blocking calls, returning letters, all to protect Rick's future and, by extension, Sentinel Cybertech, the company they had built together. But now the threat loomed larger than ever. Years ago, while reviewing old company files during a systems cleanup, Victoria had come across unusual transactions, linked to a former medical supply contract connected to a hospital where Anna had briefly worked as a researcher before becoming a pediatrician. The transactions traced back to offshore accounts controlled by Victoria. It had become clear that Anna had tried to raise red flags about the corruption in those messages to Rick, implying the secret wasn't just about the children, but something far deeper, something dangerous. That's why Victoria had ensured there would be no connection between Rick and Anna. She moved to her study, a room of perfect order where every object had its place. From a locked drawer, she pulled out a folder marked simply with her initials. Inside were 12 printed letters and emails, 6 years of Anna's attempts to contact Rick. The final letter included a photo of 3 identical toddlers, barely 1 year old, smiling at the camera. Victoria ran her fingers over the image, her expression unreadable. Had she done the right thing? At the time, Sentinel Cybertech had been close to securing its first major funding. News that Rick, her young protege, had gotten his ex-girlfriend pregnant would have been disastrous for the company's image, or so she had told herself, to justify her actions. Her phone rang, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was Rick. "I need to talk to you," he said sharply the moment she answered. "It's almost 11 p.m., Rick," she replied calmly. "Can't it wait until morning?" "No." The firmness in his tone left no room for argument. "I'm in your building's lobby." Victoria felt the chill she had sensed earlier return. She swiftly hid the folder back in the drawer and locked it. "Come up," she finally said. While waiting, she tried to organize her thoughts. Had Rick discovered something? Had Anna reached him directly? A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, she was met with a disheveled version of Rick. His shirt was wrinkled as if he'd been sitting in the same position for hours, and his normally perfect hair was tousled. "Anna has children," he said bluntly as he stepped into the apartment. "Triplets, 5 years old." Victoria kept her expression neutral, though her mind raced. "If you're shocked, why?" she asked, feigning ignorance. Rick looked her dead in the eyes. "Because of the timing, right when we broke up," he replied, studying her reaction, "which makes me wonder if there's a chance they're mine." Victoria moved slowly toward her bar. "Would you like a drink? You seem like you need one." "What I need is answers," he said, following her. "Why would you know anything about my ex-girlfriend's personal life?" "You think I do?" she asked as she poured a glass of whiskey. "Because you've managed my personal correspondence for years," he said accusingly. "You control who gets access to me and who doesn't, and your reaction when you found out Anna is coming to the wedding with 3 guests was telling." Victoria maintained her composure, though internally she realized she had underestimated Rick's intuition. "You're jumping to conclusions based on assumptions," she said, elegantly taking a seat on one of the sofas. "Anna could have moved on. The children could belong to someone else." "Then why bring them to my wedding?" Rick said, his voice rising. "Requesting front row seats. It doesn't make sense unless—" He stopped, the realization dawning. "Unless she wants me to see them. Unless she wants me to know they're mine." Victoria realized denial was futile. "Sit down, Rick," she said, with calm authority, the same tone she used when he was a young programmer full of dreams. "I have something to show you." After a moment's hesitation, Rick obeyed. Victoria returned to her study and came back with the folder. She placed it on the coffee table without a word. "What is this?" he asked, eyeing it with suspicion. "Open it," she said simply. With trembling fingers, Rick lifted the cover. His eyes widened in shock. 12 letters, printed emails, ultrasounds, all addressed to him, all from Anna. "What does this mean?" he whispered. "It means Anna tried to reach you," Victoria replied, her tone professional. "Many times." Rick lifted one of the ultrasounds. It clearly showed 3 tiny embryos. "And you blocked them all," he said, fury growing in his voice. "On what authority?" Victoria had prepared for this confrontation. "On the authority given to me by the company we built," she answered firmly. "We were about to close our first major deal. Your image as a focused young visionary was critical. A scandal involving unexpected fatherhood would have ruined us." "They're my children," Rick shouted, standing abruptly. "That was your decision to make," he said. "You were young, impulsive." "You took that decision from me," Rick shot back. "You robbed me of my children." He opened the folder fully now, hands shaking, eyes scanning the photos of the 1-year-old boys. Same eyes, same smile, the same smile he saw every morning in the mirror. "I have kids," he whispered. 3 children who don't know me, who probably think I abandoned them." Victoria tried to approach him, but he raised a hand to stop her. "Did you respond to these letters pretending to be me?" he asked, voice now cold. "I did what was best for everyone," Victoria said firmly. "Anna would move on. You would stay focused. The company—" Rick cut her off. "Did you ever intend to tell me, or were you just hoping I'd never find out?" Victoria didn't answer. Rick gathered the letters and photos, returning them to the folder. "I'm taking this," he said, with a quiet determination, his eyes stormy. "And Victoria, you're fired." She stared at him in disbelief. "You can't be serious. The company will survive," Rick interrupted. "But our professional relationship ends here. You betrayed my trust in the worst possible way." He walked to the door, folder clutched tightly under his arm. "Rick, think this through," Victoria called after him. "Everything I did was for your benefit, for ours." He paused, turned back one last time. "You did it for control. Because you couldn't handle losing it," he said, with striking clarity. "You stole 6 years from me, and my children. That's something I'll never get back." With those final words, he walked out, leaving Victoria alone with the weight of her choices. As the elevator descended, Rick looked at the photos of his children, emotions swirling, tiny reflections of himself, kids who took their first steps, spoke their first words, without him. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a message from Celeste. "Where are you? We have the food tasting for the menu tomorrow morning." The wedding, everything he'd spent months preparing, was now the last thing on his mind. A wedding that, in light of everything he'd just learned, looked completely different. As he stepped into the night, Rick faced the biggest test of his life. In just a week, he wouldn't just be seeing his children for the first time. He would have to decide what kind of man, what kind of father he was going to be, and that decision would change many lives, including his own. A gentle breeze played with Anna's hair as she watched the triplets run along the shoreline. She had decided to take them to the beach the weekend before the wedding, a small breath before the coming storm. "Look, Mom!" Leo shouted, holding up a huge seashell. "It's like a giant's house." "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said with a smile, seated on a colorful towel. Marco and Charlie were racing to build the tallest sandcastle, their small hands focused and determined. The afternoon sun bathed the scene in golden light, sparkling off the water like scattered diamonds. Anna picked up her phone and took a photo of the moment. The 3 boys, physically identical, different in personality, reveling in the simple joy of the beach. She felt her heart ache at the thought that in just 7 days, the life they knew could change forever. Her phone vibrated, an incoming call, unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. "Dr. Ramirez," a man's voice said, tense and almost unrecognizable. "Who is this?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "It's Rick," he confirmed after a pause. "We need to talk." Anna immediately glanced at her children, still lost in their games, unaware of a conversation that could alter their world. "What about?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. "You know what this is about." Rick's voice carried a mix of urgency and disbelief. "It's about our children." Anna felt the air leave her lungs. The moment she had dreamed of for 6 years was finally here, but not in the way she had expected. "How did you find out?" she asked at last, not bothering to deny it. "I found out 3 days ago," he said. "I came across an old online article mentioning you as the mother of triplets. Then I confronted Victoria." "Victoria?" Anna repeated, confused. "She blocked every attempt you made to reach me," Rick explained, his voice trembling. "Letters, emails, messages, all of it. I never knew you were pregnant. I never knew I had children." Anna closed her eyes, trying to process the revelation. For years, she had believed Rick had chosen to ignore her messages, that his career had mattered more than the possibility of fatherhood. "You never knew," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "No," Rick confirmed. "Anya, I swear, I would never have ignored something like that. Whatever happened between us, I would never abandon my children." A single tear traced down Anna's cheek as she watched the boys still playing by the sea. 6 years of quiet pain, of wondering how a man could reject his own children, dissolved in this new truth. "The wedding invitation," she began, trying to understand. "Why did you invite me if you didn't know?" There was a long silence before Rick answered. "Pride, resentment," he admitted at last, shame coloring his voice. "I wanted you to see everything I had accomplished without you. All that you could have been part of, if only you'd believed in me. It was a foolish, vindictive plan." His raw honesty surprised her. "And now that you know the truth, what do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice calm for the sake of the children who occasionally glanced back at her. "I want to meet them," he said, without hesitation. "I want to be part of their lives, to make up for lost time. I know I have no right to ask, but—" "They're your children, Rick," Anna cut in gently. "Of course you have the right to meet them." "What are they like?" he asked, his voice softening, always needing to know. "Marco is the planner, precise and thoughtful. Leo is adventurous, impulsive, brave, and Charlie feels everything deeply, sensitive, like you," she said, thinking of Rick on the other end of the line. "Charlie is just like you, but they all have your eyes, and your stubborn streak, definitely genetic." A faint laugh came from Rick's end of the call. "Anya, about the wedding," he began, his tone shifting. "You don't have to explain," Anna said, cutting him off. "I understand you have an established life. Celeste seems like a wonderful person and—" "I called off the wedding," Rick interrupted. "Last night." Anna was stunned into silence. "Why?" she asked finally. "Because I can't start a marriage on lies," he said simply. "Celeste deserved the truth about why I invited you. And when I told her, let's just say she saw a side of me she didn't like. Then I told her about the kids." "I'm sorry," Anna offered sincerely. "Don't be," Rick replied. "It was the right decision. Celeste and it was never really real. I think we both knew that." A comfortable silence settled between them, so different from the tension of their last conversation 6 years ago. "Can we meet before the wedding date?" Rick asked at last. "Privately, just you and me. There's so much we need to talk about." Anna looked toward the triplets, who were now running toward her with armfuls of seashells and beach treasures. "Tomorrow afternoon," she suggested. "The boys will be with my mum." "Tomorrow is perfect," Rick confirmed. "The cafe near Central Park at 4 o'clock?" "I'll be there," Anna promised. As she hung up, the children reached her, holding out their small hands filled with shells and colorful stones. "Look at our treasures, Mom!" Charlie squealed, his eyes sparkling. Anna pulled them all into a tight hug, inhaling the scent of sea salt and sunshine in their hair. "You're the most precious treasure in the world," she whispered, her voice catching. "And soon, you'll meet someone very special." "Who?" asked Marco, always the curious one. Anna smiled through tears she couldn't hold back. "Your dad," she answered simply. "You're going to meet your dad." The boys stared at her, puzzled and intrigued, too young to fully grasp the weight of those words. But soon, they would, and soon, the broken circle of their family would begin to mend in ways Anna never thought possible. The cafe known as the Viewpoint Cafe sat on the sunniest corner of the central plaza. Its wide windows offered a perfect view of the park, where children and adults alike enjoyed the spring afternoon. Anna arrived 5 minutes early and chose a quiet table by the window, private, yet not secluded. She wore a simple blue dress that complemented her skin tone and brought out the brown in her hair. She had debated over it for a long time in front of the mirror, scolding herself for being nervous. She didn't have to wait long. At exactly 4 p.m., the unmistakable figure of Rick Andrews walked through the cafe doors. Despite the years that had passed, Anna felt her heartbeat quicken. Rick remained a striking man, but she noticed subtle differences now. Fine lines around his eyes, a more grounded posture, and something unspoken in his gaze that hinted at experience and responsibility. He spotted her immediately and walked to the table with steady steps. Anna noticed several people whispering and pointing discreetly. Fame had its side effects. "Hi, Anna," Rick greeted, his voice calm, but his eyes revealing nerves. "Rick," she replied, offering a tentative smile. He sat across from her and placed a leather portfolio on the table. "You look great," he said sincerely. "Time's been generous to you." "Not if you count the dark circles from being a single mum," she joked, trying to ease the tension. "But thanks." A waitress came to take their order. Anna asked for herbal tea. Rick requested black coffee with no sugar. Exactly what they used to order in college, back when this cafe had been their study haven. Once the waitress left, a silence settled over them, uncomfortable, yet filled with things unsaid. So many questions, so many years, so much pain. Neither knew where to begin. "I brought these for you," Rick said finally. He opened the portfolio and pulled out a large envelope. Anna took it, curious. Inside were 3 small silver cards, each engraved with a child's name: Marco Andrews Ramirez, Leo Andrews Ramirez, Charlie Andrews Ramirez. "They're trust funds," Rick explained. "One for each. Covers college, postgrad if they want, and a starter fund for their 21st birthday." Anna felt a twist of emotion, pride and something else. "We didn't come here to talk about money, Rick," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "We've managed fine without support for 6 years. Rick raised his hands in a peace gesture. "I know, and I admire how you've raised them. Truly, this isn't about buying affection, not theirs and certainly not yours. It's just the least I can do. A small start at making things right, though I know I can never make up for the lost time." The waitress returned with their drinks, offering a short reprieve from the conversation. Once they were alone again, Rick's voice softened. "I have so many questions," he admitted. "How was the pregnancy, the birth, their first word, first steps?" His voice shook slightly as he listed all the moments he had missed. Anna felt her earlier anger dissolve in the face of his visible pain. "It was a high-risk pregnancy," she began, blowing gently on her tea. "I found out it was multiple gestation at 8 weeks, 3 perfectly formed embryos." Rick listened with complete focus, as though committing every word to memory. "My mom moved in with me during the last trimester. The doctors ordered bed rest by month 6. Anna continued. "They were born at 34 weeks, premature but healthy. Marco weighed just under 2 pounds. Leo was 1.7, and Charlie was the smallest, only 1.5. "Did they need incubators?" Rick asked, clearly moved. 3 weeks, Anna nodded. "Those were the longest days of my life, back and forth from the hospital. Bottles, barely any sleep. My mom was my lifeline." "I owe her everything," Rick said, voice low. "For taking care of them. And you." Anna nodded in quiet acknowledgement. "I tried to reach you when I confirmed the pregnancy," she confessed. "Called many times but could never get past your assistance. Emailed, no replies. I even went to Sentinel Cybertech. Never saw you." Rick closed his eyes, visibly anguished. "Victoria," he muttered. "She made sure I never got any of it. I saw all your letters at her apartment. The ultrasounds, the photos, everything. Why would she do that? Anna asked, though she already had her suspicions. She thought it would hurt the company, Rick said bitterly. We were negotiating our first major funding. She believed a paternity scandal would scare off conservative investors. Anna sipped her tea, digesting the information. And what happens to her now? She asked. She no longer works for Sentinel, Rick said firmly. I demanded her immediate resignation. She'll keep her shares in exchange for a confidentiality agreement. I don't want a media circus that could affect the boys. Anna nodded, appreciative of his caution. Tell me about them, Rick asked, leaning forward. Everything you can. For the next hour, Anna shared stories, milestones, quirks, funny incidents, how Marco learned to read before turning 4 and now devoured small books on his own, how Leo once climbed a tree in their yard at age 3 and gave her the biggest scare of her life, how Charlie had a natural ear for music, playing melodies by sound on the toy piano his grandmother gave him. Rick absorbed every detail, laughing at their antics, emotional at their accomplishments, children he had never known existed until days ago. When can I meet them? He asked at last, when the conversation paused. Anna had been waiting for the question. I've been preparing them, she said. We've talked about you. I told them their dad didn't know they existed, but now he wants to meet them. And how did they react? He asked, anxious. Mostly curious, Anna replied with a smile. They asked if you had a secret lab like Iron Man. Apparently, all their classmates think you're some kind of Tony Stark. Rick smiled, but it was tinged with tension. When? He pressed. Anna took a deep breath before answering. Tomorrow, she decided. If you're free, we can meet at the playground near the lake. It's familiar to them. They'll feel comfortable. Tomorrow, Rick echoed, savoring the word. I'll cancel everything. What time? 11, Anna suggested. That's when they're most energetic and happy. Rick nodded, both excited and nervous. Should I bring something? Toys? A gift? Anna smiled at his nervousness. Just bring yourself, she said sincerely. They don't need expensive toys. They need to meet their dad. Rick held her gaze for several seconds. In his eyes, Anna saw the idealistic young man she had once loved, before ambition and success reshaped him. Thank you, he said at last, for giving me this chance, after everything. I'm not doing it for you, Anna said gently. I'm doing it for them. They deserve to know their full story, to know where they came from. Rick nodded, understanding and accepting her terms. One last thing, he said, as he laid down enough cash to cover their drinks. Is there someone else in your life? A father figure for them? Anna hesitated for a moment, then answered truthfully. I've been seeing someone. Paul, a pediatric neurologist at the hospital. It's only been 3 months, but he's a good man. Something unreadable passed through Rick's eyes, but vanished quickly. I'm happy for you, he said sincerely. You deserve to be happy. They stood up together, knowing this meeting marked the start of a new chapter in their interwoven lives. See you tomorrow, then, Rick said, offering his hand. Anna took it, surprised by how familiar the touch still felt after all these years. We'll be there early, she added, with a half smile. Don't be late. Marco hates tardiness, just like you. Rick smiled, and for the first time since they reunited, the smile reached his eyes. I'll be there at 10:45, he promised, watching as she walked away. A nearby waiter, clearing a table, had no idea he had just witnessed a reunion that would forever change the lives of one of the most extraordinary families in the city. A family about to fully define itself. Lake Park shimmered under the morning sunlight. Families filled benches and picnic areas, while children of all ages ran across the playgrounds. Rick arrived half an hour early, too nervous to wait in his apartment. He wore a casual yet polished outfit, dark jeans, a light blue shirt, and sneakers. He had carefully chosen his look, wanting to appear relaxed but respectable. Not the image of a tech mogul, but of a father ready to meet his children. He checked his watch for what felt like the 10th time. 10:50. Any minute now. His heart pounded so hard he could feel the pulse in his temples. He'd pitched to ruthless investors, spoken in front of thousands, graced the covers of business magazines, but none of it had prepared him for the anxiety he felt in this moment. Then he saw them. Anna walked down the path, holding a boy's hand on each side. The third ran ahead, fixated on a squirrel climbing a tree. Rick froze. The resemblance was undeniable. 3 small versions of himself, with the same slightly wavy dark hair, the same athletic build, even the same way of walking. "Come on, boys, this way," Anna called, guiding them toward the bench where Rick stood waiting. As they approached, Rick noticed subtle differences. One boy was watchful, observing him closely. Another wore a confident grin. The third stayed close to Anna, his expression curious but cautious. "Good morning," Anna greeted with an encouraging smile. "We're right on time." Rick nodded, momentarily speechless. Then he knelt to be at eye level with them. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Rick. It's really nice to meet you." The serious-looking boy stepped forward. "I'm Marco," he said formally, extending his small hand. "I'm 5 years and 3 months old." Rick shook the offered hand, impressed by the gravity of the gesture. "It's great to meet you, Marco," he replied with equal sincerity. The second boy, the one with the wide smile, bounded forward. "I'm Leo," he exclaimed. "Is it true you have robots at your job? Mom says you make computers that think on their own." Rick couldn't help smiling at his energy. "We do have a few robots," he confirmed, "and we work on something called artificial intelligence, computers that learn new things every day." "Like us," Leo said proudly. The third boy remained beside Anna, watching the interaction with keen eyes. "And you must be Charlie," Rick guessed gently, turning to him with extra care. Charlie nodded silently, but his gaze was intense for such a young child. "Charlie's our musician," Anna explained, smoothing his hair. "He loves the piano." "I love music too," Rick said. "When I was about your age, my grandmother taught me to play a few songs." That caught Charlie's attention. At last, he spoke, his voice soft but clear. "Do you know how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? That's my favorite." "It's mine too," Rick said with a nostalgic smile. "Maybe we can play it together someday." A delicate silence fell over them. Anna intervened naturally. "How about we take a walk around the lake?" she suggested. The boys eagerly agreed. Leo ran ahead, pointing out ducks and asking if they could feed them. Marco walked beside Anna, occasionally glancing back to make sure Rick and Charlie were following. To everyone's surprise, Charlie reached out and took Rick's hand. Rick accepted it with infinite care, as if holding something fragile and priceless. They walked like that for a while, in a formation that felt both new and surprisingly natural. Leo led the expedition, pointing out animals and plants. Marco supplied unexpected facts. Ducks can sleep with half their brain while the other half stays awake. Charlie walked quietly beside Rick, his small hand firmly in Rick's. "Mom said, 'You didn't know we existed,'" Marco said suddenly, turning to Rick. "Is that true?" The directness startled Rick, though Anna had warned him about Marco's frankness. "It's true," Rick replied honestly. He knew these boys deserved the truth. "I only found out recently, and I'm very happy I did." "Why didn't you live with us before?" Marco pressed. Rick glanced at Anna, who gave him a slight nod, permission to continue. Your mom and I went separate ways before she knew she was having you, he explained carefully. She tried to tell me, but the messages never got through, like when a phone has no battery. Like that? Leo had run back to listen. Kind of, Rick said with a smile. But more complicated. The important thing is, I know now, and I'm really glad I get to know you. You're our dad, right? Charlie's soft voice made everyone pause. His question carried more certainty than doubt. Rick knelt to his level again, still holding his hand. Charlie, he said, voice slightly trembling, I am your dad. The three boys looked at one another, exchanging silent thoughts in only the way siblings could. Finally, Marco spoke for all of them. Are you going to stay now? He asked, with the brutal logic only a 5-year-old could possess. Dads should stay with their kids. Rick looked at Anna. The situation was complicated, but he responded with calm sincerity. We live in different houses, she explained gently, like Gabriel and Lucia's parents, remember? But that doesn't mean your dad can't be part of your lives, Rick added. Will you visit us? Leo asked, barely containing his enthusiasm. Can we visit your work and see the robots? I'd love that, Rick said, and I'll come see you as often as your mom allows. And take us to the zoo? Leo added quickly. There are baby pandas now. And big crocodiles, Charlie added, his voice brighter. Rick smiled, feeling a tightness in his throat loosen. Zoo, amusement park, beach, anywhere you want, he promised. Anna watched the interaction with mixed emotions. Part of her felt deep joy watching her sons connect naturally with their father. Another part felt a pang of unease at how quickly Rick was becoming important in their lives. How about the swings? She suggested, sensing the conversation was growing intense. The boys cheered and ran to the playground with renewed energy. Rick and Anna followed at a slower pace. They're amazing, he said, emotion thick in his voice. So smart, so perfect. They have their moments, Anna smiled. You should see them fighting over the last slice of pizza. Rick looked at her. Thank you for this, he said quietly. For letting me meet them, for not keeping me away, even after everything. As I said yesterday, I'm doing this for them, she replied. But I have to warn you, Rick, if you decide to be part of their lives, it has to be permanent. They can't go through another loss. Her voice was steady, serious. I have no intention of leaving, he said firmly. I want to be their dad, a real one. The rest of my life may not be enough to make up for these 6 years, but I'll do everything I can. They reached the swings. Leo tried to climb the tallest one, while Marco warned him about the risks. Charlie observed from a distance, waiting his turn. Can you push me? Charlie asked Rick, pointing to an empty swing. Rick's heart surged at the simple gesture of trust. I'd be honored, he said, helping the little boy into the seat. For the next hour, Rick ceased to be the CEO of Sentinel Cybertech. He was no longer the calculating executive or the technological magnate. He was just a dad, laughing, running, falling, getting up again, living moments other parents might take for granted, but which for him were priceless firsts. Anna watched them from a nearby bench, letting them build their first shared memories. Her phone buzzed, a message from Paul. How's it going? I'm here if you need me. She replied simply, It's okay, I'll call later. This moment wasn't for her, or for Paul. It was for Rick and the triplets, a bond that, despite extraordinary circumstances, deserved space to grow. Rick didn't remember falling asleep. All he remembered was lying on his couch after returning from the park, head full of questions, and heart full of something he couldn't name, something warm, something real. He awoke to the sound of his phone vibrating violently on the coffee table. It was past midnight. The caller ID read, "Private number." He answered groggily. "Hello?" "Rick, came Victoria's voice, firm and sharp. "We need to talk." "I told you," he began. "I know, but you need to listen to me," she interrupted. "Something's happened." He sat up, instantly alert. "What?" "There's been a breach," she said. "Sentinel's internal systems were accessed using a legacy admin key. One we thought was deactivated." Rick's blood ran cold. "What did they get?" he asked. "I don't know yet. The breach was clean, too clean. No flags, no logs. It's like they knew the architecture intimately." "Insider?" Rick asked, mind racing. "Possibly, but it gets worse." She paused. "A backup server sent out a data pulse to an external IP. It contained encrypted packages." Rick's instincts kicked in. "Packages of what?" "Personnel files, contracts, internal memos, including ones from the early years. Ones that tie your name to the offshore accounts you had no knowledge of." He was silent. Victoria continued. "If those files leak, the media will think you orchestrated the whole cover-up, that you hid your children, manipulated the press, and laundered early capital, regardless of what the truth is." Rick stood and began pacing. "Do we know who's behind it?" Victoria hesitated. "Anna was at a boutique last week. She ran into Gabriel Lim." Rick froze. "Gabriel?" he repeated. "He was my classmate, one of the early investors who backed out." "Yes, and I just learned something else. He now works as a cybersecurity consultant for your biggest rival." Rick's mind spun. "You think Gabriel accessed the server?" "He could have, or at least provided a way in." Rick processed this in silence. "This wasn't random," Victoria added. "This was a message. Someone's preparing to go public with something damaging." Rick clenched his jaw. "I'll handle it." "Do you want me to come in?" she asked. "You're no longer part of the company. That was your choice." Victoria didn't argue. "Good luck, Rick." He ended the call without another word. He stood in his apartment, the city glowing far below, his thoughts racing. The reunion with his children had opened something inside him, but it had also made him vulnerable. Now he wasn't just protecting a company, he was protecting a future, a family, and someone out there wanted to destroy that. He sat down at his desk and opened his laptop, fingers moving across the keyboard at lightning speed. Layers of code, encryption logs, firewall parameters, all familiar territory. This time, it wasn't about profit or pride. It was personal. He had lost 6 years already. He wouldn't lose anything more. 2 days later, Anna sat at her office desk, reviewing a patient's chart when her assistant, Claire, knocked lightly on the door. "There's someone here to see you," Claire said, her voice uncertain. "He says it's urgent." Anna looked up. "Who is it?" "Gabriel Lim." Anna's eyes narrowed slightly. "Send him in." Moments later, Gabriel entered, looking more polished than usual, but with a nervous air. He carried a slim messenger bag and wore an expression that blended apology and tension. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said. "I have 5 minutes," Anna replied coolly. "What's this about?" Gabriel sat across from her. "You're going to hear things soon. Things that paint Rick in a very bad light." Anna's pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral. "What kind of things?" "Documents," Gabriel said. "Contracts, memos, financial records. All from Sentinel's early days." Anna tilted her head slightly. "You hacked his company?" "I didn't," Gabriel said quickly. "But someone did. Someone with enough access and knowledge to dig deep. And now there's a leak." "Why are you telling me this?" Gabriel looked uncomfortable. "Because you deserve to know the truth before it becomes a headline. You have children with Rick now. This affects you, too." Anna studied him. "And what truth do you believe I should know?" she asked. Gabriel hesitated before answering. "Back in college, Rick took funding from an unnamed investor. That money was funneled through offshore accounts. It was shady. The trail leads to him. even if he didn't touch the money directly. Anna's voice sharpened. Are you saying Rick's a criminal? I'm saying he's vulnerable, Gabriel said. And people are going to exploit that. Anna's instincts kicked in. You orchestrated this, didn't you? She accused. You knew I was reconnecting with him. You used that opportunity to stir things up. Gabriel didn't deny it. You weren't supposed to fall for him again, he said, his voice low. He hurt you once. I didn't want you to get hurt again. Anna stood, jaw clenched. This isn't about me. It's about you trying to rewrite history. Gabriel stood too, clearly trying to recover. Anna, you're being naive if you think Rick didn't know about the money. People don't build empires without stepping on someone. She opened the door. We're done here, she said, and if you ever go near my children again, I'll file a restraining order. Gabriel looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He left without another word. Anna closed the door and leaned against it, breath shaky. She didn't know whether to believe him, but she knew one thing. She needed to talk to Rick. Rick was already waiting when Anna arrived at his office. She had called him 20 minutes earlier with only one sentence. We need to talk. Now. The moment she stepped through the glass doors of Sentinel Cybertech's executive floor, she was greeted not with the usual formality of a corporate environment, but with Rick personally opening his office door, sleeves rolled up, eyes stormy with anticipation. He closed the door behind her, and for a moment, they stood in silence. Gabriel came to see me, Anna said without preamble. Rick's jaw tensed. What did he tell you? He said documents are about to leak, she answered, that they tie you to offshore accounts, shady investors, from the early days of Sentinel. Rick nodded once. It's true. Anna blinked, surprised by the admission. I didn't know about the source of that money, Rick said, his voice steady. I was 19, desperate for seed funding. I signed what Victoria told me to. Everything was in her name, funneled through entities she controlled. I only found out 2 years later, but by then, the company was public, and untangling it meant dragging everything down. Why didn't you say anything? Anna asked, frustration creeping into her voice. You let people believe you were clean. I was protecting what we built, he said, and until 3 days ago, I didn't think I had anything else to protect. Anna looked away, digesting the truth. And now? Rick stepped closer. Now I have 3 sons, and you, and I won't let anyone use this to destroy what we've just begun to rebuild. Anna's eyes searched his face. She saw the man he had become, not just the brilliant young tech visionary, but someone carrying the weight of decisions made too young, too fast. So what do we do? She asked. We get ahead of it, Rick said. Tomorrow I'm holding a press conference. I'm going to tell the truth. Anna's eyes widened. You'd admit everything? I'd rather be judged for my honesty than crucified by a lie, he said. And the boys? They stay out of it, Rick answered firmly. This has nothing to do with them. I'll take all the heat. Anna stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll be there. Rick blinked. You will? You're the father of my children, she said. And you're telling the truth. That counts for something. Rick let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Thank you, he said. For their sake, she added, just to be clear. Understood, Rick replied, but his eyes shone with something else. Resolve, respect, and perhaps the first flicker of hope. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp at Sentinel Cybertech's main auditorium. Invitations had gone out the night before, and by morning, the room was filled with reporters, industry analysts, and flashing cameras. Anna sat toward the back, unnoticed by most, her heart pounding as Rick stepped onto the stage. He wore a dark grey suit, no tie, and the look of a man ready to face a storm. He approached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and let the room settle. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady. "My name is Rick Andrews, and I'm the founder and CEO of Sentinel Cybertech." A few shutters clicked. The room hushed. Over the past 15 years, this company has grown beyond anything I ever imagined. From a college dorm dream to one of the leading voices in AI and cybersecurity. But I'm not here to talk about our success today. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Recently, there has been a breach. Unauthorized access to early company records. I want to be the one to clarify what those records show and why they exist. Anna leaned forward slightly, hands clenched. "When I was 19, Rick continued, I accepted seed money through channels I didn't fully understand. Those funds were facilitated by someone I trusted, someone who made legal and financial decisions on my behalf. At the time, I believed it was legitimate." He looked directly at the crowd. "I later learned the money came through offshore entities with questionable origins. I should have spoken out then, but I didn't. I was afraid of losing everything we had built." Murmurs echoed through the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. "I take full responsibility for my silence," Rick said. "I didn't steal. I didn't knowingly commit fraud, but I also didn't speak up, and that was a mistake." He took a deep breath. "This company, my team, my family, deserves better, and from today on, I commit to complete transparency. I've submitted all related documents to the appropriate legal authorities and regulators. I've also stepped down temporarily as CEO, effective immediately, while an independent audit is conducted." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Anna's eyes widened. This part he hadn't told her. Rick raised a hand to calm the commotion. "I will cooperate fully. I will take the consequences, but I won't allow my silence to define me." He stepped away from the microphone, ignoring the flood of shouted questions. Flashbulbs exploded in bursts of white light as he exited the stage. Anna slipped out of the room, through the side hall, and waited by the private exit. Moments later, Rick appeared, his shoulders tense, eyes tired. "You didn't tell me you were stepping down," she said, as he approached. "I had to," he replied. "I can't lead a company while dragging it through a scandal." Anna searched his face. He looked exhausted, but lighter somehow, freed. "You did the right thing," she said. Rick nodded. "Now I just want to be a father, a real one, not a symbol." Anna smiled, soft and full of something close to admiration. "Then let's start with lunch," she said. "The boys are waiting." For the first time in days, Rick smiled back. "Let's go home." The sun filtered gently through the windows of Anna's cozy dining room as the triplets sat at the table, finishing up their spaghetti. Marco wiped his mouth with a napkin like a little gentleman. Leo had sauce on his nose. Charlie hummed while twirling noodles with his fork. Rick sat across from them, still in his rolled-up shirt sleeves, watching the scene with quiet awe. "Who wants dessert?" Anna called from the kitchen. "Me!" all three boys chorused. Rick chuckled. "Do they ever disagree on anything?" "Only when it's time to clean their room," Anna answered, entering with a tray of banana pudding and whipped cream. "Then it's every man for himself." The boys giggled. Rick leaned toward Charlie, who sat beside him. "You like music, right?" he asked. Charlie nodded enthusiastically. "I'm learning a new song on the piano." "Want to show me after dessert?" Rick offered. "Yes," Charlie beamed. Anna served the pudding, and for several minutes the room filled with happy silence as the children ate. Rick felt a strange but welcome warmth in his chest. He had attended galas in Dubai, closed deals in Berlin, and vacationed on private islands, but nothing compared to banana pudding in a home filled with laughter. Later, in the living room, Charlie played a simplified melody of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, while Rick sat beside him, pressing keys to match. "You remember it," Anna said quietly from the doorway. "I never forgot," Rick replied, not taking his eyes off the piano. Leo sat on the floor, building a tower out of magnetic blocks, while Marco arranged his small library in alphabetical order. Anna stepped forward and sat beside Rick on the couch. "I've been thinking," she began. He turned to her, sensing the shift in her tone. "This new chapter, it's not going to be easy. You and me, the kids, there are a lot of wounds to heal, a lot of time to recover." "I know," Rick said sincerely. "And I still don't fully trust you," she admitted. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "But I see how they look at you," she continued. "Especially Charlie. They're drawn to you. They're starting to trust you, and that matters more than anything." Rick swallowed hard. "I'll never walk away again," he said. "I'm here, Anna, for all of it, for the long haul." She nodded slowly. "We'll take it one day at a time." "Fair," Rick replied. A sudden crash interrupted them. Leo had knocked over his tower and was laughing hysterically. Marco frowned at the mess. Charlie turned from the piano to investigate. Rick stood and walked over, kneeling to help them rebuild. Anna watched him, this new version of the man she had once loved. He was no longer just the genius behind an empire. He was a father now, and maybe, just maybe, he could be something more. But for tonight, they were just a family, and for now, that was enough. 6 months later, the leaves in Central Park had turned shades of red and gold. It was early fall, and the triplets were running across the open field in matching jackets, each chasing after a kite that soared in the clear blue sky. Rick stood a few feet away, watching them with a peaceful smile as he adjusted the string on Charlie's kite. Anna approached, a thermos of hot cocoa in one hand, a smile playing at her lips. "They still haven't figured out how to keep them in the air," she said, handing him a cup. "They'll get it," Rick replied, taking a sip. "Marco already figured out the angle of the wind. He just hasn't told the others." Anna laughed. "He's been doing that with homework too, pretending not to know until Leo gets frustrated." Rick chuckled, then turned serious. "Thanks for inviting me today," he said. "I know we've been navigating everything one step at a time." "You've earned being here," Anna said, her voice sincere. "You show up, you call, you listen. That matters." The wind picked up and Leo squealed as his kite caught a gust and lifted. "Look, Dad, I did it!" Rick grinned. "That's my boy." The triplets cheered for their brother as Anna reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "What's this?" Rick asked. "It's from the school," Anna said. "Family Day is next month. They want both parents present for the first time." Rick took the envelope carefully, eyes softening. "Both parents," he repeated. "I told them you'd be there," she said. "If you're still up for it." "I wouldn't miss it," Rick replied, his voice steady. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of laughter and wind around them, the kites dancing above. "6 months ago, I didn't think this would ever be possible," Anna admitted. "Neither did I," Rick said. "But I'm glad we're here." Charlie ran back toward them, cheeks flushed from the breeze. "Mom, Dad, I want to draw this later. Me, my brothers, and our kites." Anna knelt down. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart." Rick ruffled Charlie's hair. "Just make sure you draw mine the highest." Charlie laughed and ran back to his brothers. Anna and Rick watched them, hearts full. They had started as strangers, became enemies, lived as memories, and now stood side by side as co-parents to 3 beautiful, curious, unstoppable boys. It wasn't the life either of them had planned, but sometimes the best stories weren't the ones written in advance. They were the ones rewritten together. The end. This is Mr. Hope. Thank you all for watching.